Well, it's been a while since I've made a video. The last video that I made was a review of this Chinese-made knife. I believe it was pronounced Citivian, or at least that's how I pronounced it. Made out of D2 steel. I liked it pretty well. For the price, it's good build quality and everything. Supposedly D2 steel. I compared it to this Civivi Baklash, which is also a Chinese-made knife. I like the build quality quite a bit better on this one. And it got me to thinking that maybe what I ought to do is just kind of do a series of reviews on cheap budget Chinese knives. Obviously, there's better knives to be had if you have the money, but not everybody has the money. So sometimes you're looking for something in a budget, maybe for a gift or for yourself. Um, and these aren't always bad options. So I've actually got several here that I want to kind of do a review on. I'll do one video on each knife, so we already did a video on this first one. The Civivi there featured a little bit in that video. And then I have another Civivi here that's actually made with Damascus steel, which is very attractive looking steel. And we'll go into that a little bit more on that video. And then I have a, I don't know how to pronounce some of these knives. Sanrenmu, maybe? It is a Sebenza clone or knockoff, probably would be a better way of saying it. This one was dirt cheap when I bought it. They've actually gone up a lot in price because they got good reviews. So we'll look at that one. And then the last one that I have here, I'm actually going to do a little bit of an unboxing on, and it's a Ned Foss knife. So that one I'll hold off until we get to that video. But a total of 5 knives that I kind of just want to look at. And like I said, we already did the one here, which again I was fairly impressed with given the price versus the quality on it. So I want to do a quick review on the Civivi Baklash. I already kind of talked about this knife a little bit, so I won't spend as much time on it, but it's been my everyday carry knife actually for a while. Once in a while I rotate it out. So I know a little bit more about it now. You can see it's not quite as pretty as it once was. There's some scratches to the finish and stuff like that. I actually dropped this thing out of my pocket one day and it went skittering across the asphalt, and I took a little bit of the G10 here and scuffed it up. So I've got a little bit better feel for this knife and the quality of it. I still have to say the build quality is excellent. I mean, I've not taken it apart and cleaned it at all, and that ball bearing action is still extremely smooth. Very slick. Feels so good in the hand. I have had a little bit of problem with this belt clip working itself loose. I've had to tighten it maybe 2 or 3 times. Worse than that, though, was one day when I was getting out of a vehicle, the pocket clip, it was in my pocket, it actually snagged on the door or the seat belt or something. I don't remember what it grabbed onto, but it grabbed onto something and it bent out at a 90-degree angle. So I actually had to take the clip off and try to hammer it back into shape. So it's a little bit worse for wear. It's not perfectly straight right there. It's got some bends in it, but I've made it work. So a couple thoughts on this knife. So the Civivi, a lot of their knives are either made out of D2 or, in the case of this one, like this one, it's 9CR18 MOV, which is a Chinese steel. I had to kind of look it up. It was my first introduction. The Civivi knives were my first introduction to this steel. And from everything that I can tell, it's supposed to be fairly similar to like a 440C. It's supposed to be better than an AUS 8. I gotta say, that's the one thing I disagree on. From my experience with this knife, and then my father-in-law also has one, same model but with a black blade. And I can tell you in both of those cases, these knives, this steel has proven to be extremely soft. I know Cold Steel has some AUS 8 that would just blow this out of the water as far as the quality of the steel itself, how long it'll hold an edge, the toughness of the steel, the hardness of the steel, all that. This doesn't even come close. So I don't know if both of us just got ones that didn't have the best heat treat or what. So that's my biggest complaint with this knife, honestly, is the quality of the steel, which I will say right now you're going to find is a theme across all these Chinese-made knives. The Chinese can actually make a pretty good knife as far as build quality, but I have yet to find one that has a decent steel in the blade. Now, Maybe if you upgraded to the Wii knives, which is the parent brand of the Civivi, and it's quite a bit more expensive, you might find that they've got good steel in them. But I will say that I'm not willing to spend the kind of money that it costs to buy one of the Wii knives to find out whether or not that steel is any good. So if anybody wants to leave comments to their experience with the Wii knives, that's fine. But like I said, as of yet, I have not tested those waters. So anyway, the way I'm saying that this steel's soft, I don't want you to get the wrong idea. Now, when I bought this knife, it was like a $32, $35 knife. For the price, I'm satisfied with it. It's easy to sharpen. You can get a super sharp edge on this thing very easily. That is the benefit of softer steel. Of course, it doesn't hold it nearly as long. You start cutting into anything that's abrasive. You cut some cardboard with this thing, it'll cut it really well. But you're probably going to have to definitely touch up the edge, if not just completely resharpen the edge by the time you're done doing it, if you do it for very long. That's what I found with it. It just doesn't hold an edge very long. It's soft. And the first time that I realized how soft this steel was, my father-in-law brought his over and wanted me to sharpen it. And when he pulled it out and I looked at it, the tip was completely bent, just like it was mangled. It was bent all over the place, like almost in an S. And I asked him what he had been doing, had he been prying with it. And I've gotten on to him before about using his knives like screwdrivers and stuff. And he said no, he really liked the knife and he had been kind of babying it, so he wasn't sure how in the world he had bent that tip up. Well, I took it out to my anvil and I just hammered lightly on it and it just folded right back straight like soft cheese. I mean, it was crazy how soft that steel was. Um, so I don't know if his is even softer than mine. I've not encountered that, but I also haven't used this thing very heavily for anything other than like opening boxes and day-to-day type stuff. I'm not going out in the woods with it or anything like that. I take a different knife if I'm going to be using it hard. I have specific knives that I use as work knives if I'm going to be abusing them because I don't care if they get broken or chipped up. And at least right now, this isn't one of them. So that being said, as far as what do I like about the Civivi, well, let's go over a little bit of the knife itself, right? So again, I mentioned that the blade is the 9CR 18 MOV. The handle is made out of G10, which I do like. I love G10 as a handle material. And this stuff is pretty nice. It is got a little bit of texture to it, so it provides some grip, but it's not overly grippy. It's not going to shred your pocket up or anything like that, but it's also not going to just fly out of your hand easily. So I like the G10 handle. Those are pretty nice. The blade itself, I love this blade shape. Of course, very fine point that you're going to have to be careful of because anytime you got a point that's that thin, that's that fine, you've got the chance of breaking that off, even if it is really good steel. It's just a very fine point. But that makes that's very useful for certain cutting tasks, having a point like that. I just love the shape of the blade. This kind of swedge on the back, this false edge, if you want to call it that. The jimping on the spine is really nice for when you're choking up on something and cutting, having that jimping, that extra grip. It's even got a little bit of jimping in the liner lock. Speaking of the liner lock, you can tell if you look in those that they're skeletonized and they are anodized as well. They've got this blue color to them, which I really like, against the handle material here, the alternating colors. Now, one thing you will find as I do videos, I am colorblind, so if I mention a color and it's wrong, you'll have to forgive me. I'm telling you what it looks like to me. So I'm not even going to try on the handle scales. I believe these were supposed to be like an olive drab. The handle scales, but for all I know they could be tan, but I like the color of them anyway. I like the contrasting colors. Again, the action on this knife is just buttery smooth. I love the opening of this knife. Now, I have been wearing this thing in my pocket every day for like 6 months, so I will say that I am clearly getting some lint down in there because even though it's still smoother than 95% of the knives I own, I can tell that it's not flying open as easily or as quickly, as smoothly as it did when I first got it. So at some point I'll probably have to tear this thing down and clean it out. The blade, I was talking about the shape. The length on this blade is about 3.5 inches. Overall, you're looking at just a little over 8 inches for the knife itself. It's got a deep carry pocket clip, which I like because your knife's not sticking way out of your pocket. Basically, all you see is the clip. So you've got that deep carry clip. And it is a reversible clip, so you can actually put it on the left or the right. Now it's not tip up, tip down reversible, so you don't have the option of carrying it any other way than having the tip up. So that's something to just be aware of if you're somebody who likes to carry in your pocket with the tip down. That's not an option on this knife. Uh, I gotta say, other than the soft Chinese steel, which I know is actually a pretty big deal, but you are talking budget knives. So when you buy a budget knife, I think you have to be aware that it's a knife that you're gonna have to sharpen quite a bit more. It's gonna usually hold an edge very little, but it'll take an edge very well. So in other words, you'll be able to put a very sharp edge on a cheap steel normally. Razor sharp, it's just not gonna hold that edge super long. So if you're somebody who's good at sharpening knives or you have a good sharpening system, this may not be a big deal for you, having the softer steel. However, if you're looking at something that you're only going to want to have to sharpen once in a while, this is probably not the knife for you. And I'm going to say that's probably true of all of these Chinese-made knives that we're going to look at. So anyway, those are kind of the highlights of this knife. It does come, you can buy this thing with so many different colors. As far as scales, that is one nice thing about it. It is one of the cheapest knives in the Civivi line. And I gotta say, it's one of my favorites as far as just the look of it. It's just a very sleek looking knife. It fits good in the hand, it feels good, the action's great, it cuts really well, it's an excellent slicer. Really the only downside is you're just gonna have to realize that you're gonna have to sharpen that knife quite a bit. And again, like I said, with the experience that my father-in-law had with the tip bending, without him even doing anything that he'd be aware of that would have caused that, I think you just got to be real careful with that fine tip. At least we know it's not brittle, right? It's not going to break on you. It's not going to snap, but it clearly will bend. And that's what you get into with those budget steels and cheaper knives. Like I said, everything I've read about the 9 CR18 MOV steel is it's supposed to be a better mid-grade steel than what I've experienced so far with these. But you know, your mileage may vary. I don't know. It could do with the heat treat, and one batch may have a better heat treat than another. I'm not sure. I don't know what the quality control is, but like I said, as far as the build quality, it would seem like they've at least got decent quality control measures in place for that, because these are very well built knives. They feel and look like a high-end knife in every other facet of the knife other than the quality of the steel. So that's the Civivi Baklash. If you're looking for a budget knife, you know, I'd buy it again. I got to be honest. I really like this knife. Wish it had better steel, but I like the knife.